What's up, everyone? You are not going to want to miss the coming show. My guest today is going to talk about the entrepreneurial reality check. Is it time to stay in business? Is it time to step back? These are the burning questions that you definitely want to know. So with that, get ready for the upcoming episode of the Susan Sly Project.
Welcome to the Susan Sly Project, where entrepreneurs rule, startups launch, and the side hustle becomes the main hustle. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Susan Sly.
Well, hello, everyone. I hope you're having an incredible day. I want to give shouts out and love to New Zealand, who's now in the top 5 of our listening audiences. UK, of course, is holding strong at number 3, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So way to go. And we're now in 121 countries. And if you are ready for the raw and real talk about entrepreneurship, and then today's show is just for you. My guest is an expert in, let's call them, the new principles of leadership. He mentors entrepreneurs. He has spoken at some of the most significant events, really assisting people with this journey of self-awareness. And let me read you just a little bit about him. He's the host of the new P&L Principles and Leadership in Business podcast series, which I have listened to, and the founder of the new P&L Institute, an applied creative thinking consultancy, Amplifier Group. He's a speaker, presenter, and panel moderator on topics and trends around principles and leadership in business, as well as the growing field of commercial creativity. And we're going to jump in talking about his journey, but my guest today is the one and only Paul Spiers. So Paul, welcome.
Thank you very much, Susan. Glad to be here.
So Paul, let me ask you, how did you make the decision to transition from this corporate senior executive to someone who said, that's not what I want to do anymore. I want to spend my time really empowering others? Because there are a lot of people who listen to the show who they have a job, they want to make that transition, they just don't know how. How did it happen for you?
I think there's a big difference between having an idea and having a dream, and recognizing that your passion and your purpose exists within that idea or that dream. Because I think when you first start as an entrepreneur, you've got a lot of excitement about a new venture, but there's a huge amount of hard work and determination and persistence and reality checks that need to feed into that entrepreneurial venture. So when I first went, and I've been an entrepreneur off and on for most of my adult life. I've run agencies, set up agencies, much like yourself, held some senior roles in other agencies as well. But I keep coming back to the desire to create my own life, my own destiny. And I think that's really the determining factor behind me becoming an entrepreneur, and a persistent entrepreneur, as I like to call myself, because there's nothing better in life than controlling your life and taking hold of your life. And entrepreneurship gives you that opportunity. Now, with that opportunity comes responsibility, and it's not all an easy ride, as I suggest. But if it's up to you and you're able to control it, then there's nothing better in your life than to be able to steer the ship in that regard. So that's why I took the jump from the corporate ship to the entrepreneur dinghy and paddled very, very hard at the beginning to get that, to keep it afloat. But it's a wonderful experience. It's absolutely enthralling and inspiring, but it does come with a lot of hard work.
What advice would you give to someone listening right now who's saying, you know what, Paul, I'm exhausted, I'm burned out, I want to start something. I think one more day as an employee, I'm going to lose my mind. What advice would you give to them?
I don't believe in the burn your bridges and start something new. I think there's a reality to life today, particularly if you're in the corporate world, that you should start that cliched side hustle, but do something towards that entrepreneurial dream or venture every day. Make it your discipline, set yourself time every day to start moving towards it. Now, some of those things could be expanding your curiosity, looking at how you think about your proposition more creatively. What are the markets you want to move into? What are the realities of the product or service you're trying to sell? How difficult is it? How easy is it? But whatever those things are, do something slowly towards that move. I think in terms of the self-awareness, to sort of weave it into this point, also though at the same time, and almost in contradiction to what I've just said, make sure you're not making an excuse for why you're not launching that entrepreneurial venture as well. Whatever your challenges in life, that shouldn't prohibit you moving forward. And the new P&L, my venture now, came out of a very challenging period of my life, but I had to move it forward. And it was small steps at the start. But you must make sure that you're self-critical enough in a positive sense and self-aware enough to make sure that you're not putting artificial barriers in your mind in terms of starting that entrepreneurial venture, whatever that challenge happens to be in life.
I love what you said, that make sure you're not making an excuse, right? What would you say? And I want to get into the challenges that helped you birth the new P&L. I want to ask you this first. When you say make sure you're not making an excuse, what are some of the common excuses that you see people make in terms of, I'm an employee, I want to start a business, but I am making excuses? Because I think for those watching and listening, if they're, maybe they're going, oh my gosh, I think he's talking to me right now. So what are some of those excuses?
Time is the biggest excuse, isn't it? I haven't got the time. I haven't got the inclination. I'm too busy at my current job. But we find time for all of the things, or many of the things we love in life. And if you are passionate about this, your entrepreneurial venture, your entrepreneurial dream, then you will find the time. And if you can't find the time, then I would suggest there's probably that thing in your mind, that dream or that goal that you believe you have for your entrepreneurial success, probably isn't the dream or goal you need for your entrepreneurial success. Because if you can't find the time, then there's something in you, either it's instinct, intuition, dare I say it, laziness, but something in there is saying to you, this probably isn't for me. And that's the number one inhibitor, I think, to entrepreneurial success, or to the potential of entrepreneurial success, is someone saying, I don't have the time. But we must make the time. And I said to someone the other day, the entrepreneurial journey is like trying to open a tin can with a pin. It's probably technically possible, but functionally stupid. So if you haven't got the patience, the determination, the persistence to stick at opening that tin with a pin, you'll have to excuse my Kiwi accent. Probably I hope people understand what I'm saying with that. But if you don't have the persistence to open the tin with a pin, then that dream probably isn't strong enough for you.
Well, I resonate with that statement. Technically functional, but operationally stupid. I think it needs to be a t-shirt. I really do. Did you ever have that excuse? Because people listening might say, well, Paul sounds so certain. Did you ever have excuses?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are still days now, as I'm sure you find, where you've got to give yourself a good talking to, just because you've leapt into it. Someone said to me the other day, your entrepreneurial journey, you can have the best day and the worst day in the same day. And I think that's absolutely true. And I still give myself a good talking to, when things are tougher than they should be, or perhaps you feel they need to be. There's another argument that they are exactly where they need to be, that this is what you need to learn for today. And I'm a full advocate of that as well. But I've had entrepreneurial failures in the past. I set up a surfwear clothing brand because I was so passionate about surfing. And it was, I recognize in hindsight, a midlife crisis, but only marginally better than buying a Ferrari, I think. But I set it up. I loved surfing, but I wasn't ingrained and embedded enough in the surfing culture. So I didn't understand. I knew how to surf. What I didn't understand is how to run a surf business. And that failed. And it was a great concept and a great brand. But I recognized quite soon into the journey that the passion that I had for surfing was not replicated in the passion I had for the business. And that's quite a clear distinction as well. I think you may have a passion for a certain industry, certain product, certain area, but whether you've got a passion to have a business in that area is quite another thing, I think.
How do you know the difference between it's time to quit or let go of a business, or it's time to dig in? Because a few months ago, I was speaking to a friend of mine who he's built many successful businesses. Then during the recession, he lost many businesses. And he said to me, Susan, sometimes you have to stay where it's hard.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, losing the surf business, and I lost a business in 2000, I lost a health club. Mm-hmm. How do you know when it's time to say, maybe this is not the right thing for me right now, versus I need to dig in, I need to learn? Because there are people who get burned out. There are people who get exhausted, but they're really, if they could step back and just stay in the game for a few more weeks, they'd have that next breakthrough. How do you know the difference?
I think if I had the absolute answer to that, I'd be calling you from my jet, not my lounge. I think it's a very difficult question to answer. I think my view on it is, again, it comes back to self-awareness, but part of that self-awareness is understanding what the purpose is for you in that business, and whether you and that purpose are instinctively tied together, whether that business is part of you or whether it is a business that is separate to you. And I guess another question to ask yourself as part of that analysis is, would the pain of not being in that business be greater than the pain in staying in it? And I think and it's very difficult to do, but I think if you can step outside it and say, well, what would I be doing if I wasn't running this business? Where would I have to take employment? What would I be doing? And would that make life easier, not financially in the short term, but easier in my mind, easier in my settlement with the passion that I have for life? Or, despite how hard it is actually the pain less for me to stay in the business, because my purpose and my belief in myself are intimately entwined, and this business is part of me, not part of an industry. And I think there is no line upon which you put one leg either side and you think, well, I know it or I don't. You've got to go with your intuition in these things. But that's the question I would be asking myself. Is the pain leaving greater than the pain of staying? And is your business part of you, or is it part of something else?
There are a lot of people who stay and they're in pain, but they're not quitters. And sometimes quitting can be really healthy, and sometimes it's done for the wrong reasons. You mentioned the new P&L out of a place of challenge. Do you want to talk about that challenge?
Yeah, I can talk about a broad overview of it. I had my own agency, my own marketing agency, successful. I had a series of, I guess, unethical actions inflicted upon me in the agency, which took the agency and myself to its knees. At that time, being a marketeer, you always find creativity in adversity. And the new P&L came to me as a concept at that point, that there has to be something more to business than profit and loss. It's got to be about principles and purpose. There's got to be a new P&L, principles and leadership. Mm-hmm. So that idea sat with me for a little while, for a few years, while I rebuilt things and got my life back on track, if you like. And then somewhere in the back of the dusty confines of my brain a couple of years ago, the idea of the new P&L and a podcast came together. I thought I'd dip my toe in the water to see whether it would resonate with an audience, resonate with guests. And it just seemed to explode and take off. And, I think as equally as important as recognizing that great ideas and creativity come from adversity is, and I gave a keynote on this yesterday, is the power of ensuring that if an idea is not right for right now, that you don't let go of that idea, that you hold on to it, you curate it, you revisit it, because life isn't static, life is organic, and your life context changes and your viewpoint changes and the people that can influence that idea change. And so because that idea didn't work 2 or 3, 4 years ago, or the idea didn't seem to fit, you've got to keep coming back. You've got to be fair to the idea, is what I say. You've got to keep coming back to that idea. It wants to come to life and it wants to be shaped, but sometimes you don't have the right hands to shape it at that time.
Mm. And it must have been challenging. And I've had that experience myself, something you've worked day in, day out. You have a team of people. It's your business, it's your brand, it's become part of your identity. And to have, to have so many things happen at a time that causes others to question you. When I lost my business, it was actually written about on the front page of our local newspaper, in addition to my divorce. And so that's why I always look at the tabloids and say, yeah, okay, there's a real story behind there, and this isn't it. But to go through publicly losing a business is really, really tough. And then to pick oneself back up and say, okay, now I'm going to start another business. How did you do that mentally? Because a lot of people wouldn't have. And so that puts you in some rarefied air. Most people, when something happens to a business, they say, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going back into the work world. But how did you mentally pick yourself back up?
I think it's a little bit of nature and nurture. I think my mother is an extraordinarily strong woman, and she raised 7 kids and raised them very well, and it was a very tough environment. And I think she gave us a lot of inner strength. So I think there's a nurture bit there where you have seen adversity and you've seen how strong your mother is, and you just learn, from that. And I think there's a little bit of nature. I just think there's something in me, like there's something in you, something in many entrepreneurs, that we don't necessarily fit the mold. We don't always see adversity. We may see adversity as a negative in the moment. We don't see it as a defining moment of our lives. We see it as something to build on and build from. And as I said, with the new P&L, finding that creative spark in the middle of that adversity. And I think that is something that's quite beautiful about entrepreneurs. You hear of great successes followed by tremendous failure, and then 2 years later, they're back in tremendous success again. And I don't think there's a gene for it. I think it's a combination of nature and nurture and experience and the wonderful support you have around you and the determination you have. But there is something that makes you just get up, and you've got to believe in a better tomorrow, don't you? You have to believe in a better tomorrow. There isn't any alternative to that. And we often have so many negative narratives in our heads. And I often think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we succeed in spite of ourselves. And what if we could consistently turn that negative narrative positive? Imagine how amazing we would be and things would be if that narrative that we scratch at the back of our heads all of the time, if that was a consistently positive narrative. So I just think you've got to believe consistently that tomorrow will be better.
It's that unbridled optimism, but without the naivete. Now, you strike me, Paul, as someone who's done a tremendous amount of work on your mindset. So what, for people watching and listening, what do you have books you would recommend, or have there been mentors, or what has helped you shift your mindset to this point? Because you really are remarkable, to the surf business, to the agency, but to pick yourself up and say, no, I'm going to go forward and I'm going to spend my career adding value to people's lives. So what have been some of the tools for you to hone your mindset?
I could recommend books and I could recommend personal development experts and everything else, but I think too often we lean on those external supports. And I think most of us, I would hope all of us, actually have what we need already inside of us. What it is to get it out is consistency and discipline, is applying yourself to those affirmations or the gratitudes every day, you know, recognizing what you do have rather than what you don't. And I'm really, I've got a real thing at the moment, and I'm doing a lot of writing about it, that the pandemic has been terrible in many, many ways. Many businesses have been strained, many people have lost their lives, many families have been disrupted in so many ways. But I do also think there are many people out there who have found a resilience through the last 12 months that they probably didn't think they had. And they found a strength of character and an ability and a resilience that probably wasn't recognized because they were never put in that position. And I would like to think that we can find that well that we have individually created of resilience over the last 12 months and utilize it as we come out over the next 12 months and put it into our lives and put it into our business, because we are so much stronger than we give ourselves credit for. And that's where that negative narrative creeps in and says, oh, you failed, or you won't be able to achieve this, or you won't be able to do this. But look at what we've all just got through. And we are resilient individuals, and we continually rise again. We just have to focus daily on the discipline that recognizes that resilience and recognizes that gratitude and that self-belief. It's the consistency that is the key. There's no point reading a book, a self-help book or otherwise, if you're not going to apply that day after day after day, because like training sessions in business, 2 weeks after, no one's really applying the training because there's no mechanism to continually deliver it. So that it relies on us. It's our responsibility as individuals to be disciplined and consistent about what we tell ourselves, why we tell ourselves that, and how we deliver that in action.
Beautiful. I love what you said. We all have it within us, and we're stronger than we give ourselves credit for. I had a friend, Jerry, and I was at his house in Dallas, and he had a library. It had 4,000 books. And I said, have you read all of these books? And he was very successful. And he said, Susan, what I do is I read a book, and then I'll take a concept and I'll apply the concept, but I'll put down the book.
Yes.
And I felt that was so valuable, because when, to your point, you can have the best collection of books. You can listen to Paul's show, this show. You can, you know, I know there are people who listen every single week, but if you're not applying it, you don't have the consistency and the discipline. You're not going to get the results. Speaking of consistency and discipline, I ask all of my guests this, and people love to know, walk us through your day.
Well, I get up at 5, but I don't get up at 5 because I believe in the entrepreneurial mantra of 5 a.m. and all of that sort of thing. I don't really subscribe to that entrepreneurial mantra. I just get up early because I enjoy it. I start with my breathing. Wim Hof, who you may be familiar with, yes. The deep breathing, that's been a revelation for me in the last 12 months. I started that roughly 12 months ago, the deep breathing, the cold showers, the holding of the breath. That has been a forced 20 minutes of introspection and meditation that, aside from all of the health benefits that it delivers, has really forced me to just start my day by thinking inward rather than picking up social media and, you know, picking up your phone and checking who's liked you on LinkedIn or whatever it happens to be. So I start with that. 5 till 7, I will read, or I'll go for a walk, or that's my favorite part of the day because no one's emailing, no one's ringing. The sun during the summer is shining, and you can sit out the back and have a coffee and think. And I think you've got to start your day with starting with yourself. The minute you start your day by engaging in some other way, giving up control through your mobile phone or whatever it happens to be, I think you set the tone for the day. If you start the day by controlling yourself and believing in yourself and setting the tone for the day by yourself, I think over time it's remarkable what shift that makes in how you approach your day and how you approach the people and the challenges you have in your day. When you start your day by picking up a mobile phone, you relinquish control as soon as you wake up. And I'm not anti-technology, but I'm a firm believer that it must work for us, not the other way around.
Mm, that's beautiful. And my cousin is a huge subscriber to Winhoff as well. And he's released 50 pounds. And I'm so proud of him. Stephen, shouts out to Stephen. And like you, I do not look at my phone for the first several hours of the day. I wake up early as a choice, or sometimes my daughter's cat will wake me up. This morning it was at 4 a.m. But the sacred moments of the day are so huge. And on Sundays, I call them sold out Sundays, SOULED. And I don't look at my mobile phone. I don't look at, anything. And I have great friends who honor the Sabbath, and they're multimillionaires many times over. They don't look at technology from Friday night to Saturday afternoon. And I think that we weren't designed as humans to be 7 days a week, to be all the time. And when we need something, it owns us, to your point, which I love. Final question, tell everyone about the new P&L. And I want everyone to check out. The thing I love about your show is like these short sound bites. It's a wee bit addictive, right? It's like one after the other. But tell everyone about your work now and how they can connect with you, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. So the new P&L, Principles and Leadership in Business podcast series, available on all major platforms. We're focused on exactly what the name suggests, discussing with guests and discussing topics around principled leadership in business and how that should look in the future, what more self-awareness should look like in leadership, more courageous or audacious leadership should look like, resilient leadership. And a big thing I think for the future is also what more creative leadership looks like. How do we weave creativity across a business? So creative thinking, rather than just sitting it in the marketing or the design department or whatever it happens to be. How do we remain curious? How do we join dots in different ways? How do we seek the future of our business and find ourselves in the process? And we have 2 shows each week. We interview the deep discussion, which is the Wednesday interview. And then we have the new P&L to the point on Friday, where we take some of the topics from that discussion and break them down, and I analyze them a little bit. And I think the key point really for us is that we do a huge amount of research in advance, because we want to get right to the root of some of these really important topics, because I think there are so many things in business that, as you suggested earlier, entrepreneurs really want to understand and they need to understand. And we have so much information out there, we're almost awash with information but bereft of knowledge at the moment. And so our ambition is to try and just play our own small role in giving a little bit more knowledge to our audience.
Beautiful. Well, I would love for everyone to connect with you, and you can visit principlesandleadership.com. I want to add a "the" there, so just ignore what I said. Or on Instagram, it's at Principles and Leadership, which you and I will connect there. Twitter, the new P&L. And so, Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. It's been a real pleasure to meet you.
Oh, and thank you. And if anyone is watching on YouTube, drop a comment below, because it's me, not my EA. It's me who's responding to all of your comments. If you've got a comment from Paul, let him know, or tag him on Instagram in your story. If you're, take a snapshot of us and do whatever you do, but we would love that shout out. So with that, this has been another episode of the Susan Sly Project, and I look forward to seeing you next time.